Look, I'm not saying the Galactic Council made a mistake when they classified humans as a Category 4 deathworld species. I'm just saying that maybe, just maybe, they should have spent a little more time observing what humans actually do when they're not, surviving on a planet that's actively trying to murder them every single day. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about Lieutenant Commander Elena Vasquez. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. The human who absolutely ruined the reputation of her entire species by being aggressively, almost offensively kind. And about Kersh, the Veltharan cub who thought hiding under her bed was a brilliant survival strategy. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. The whole thing started on the TSS Harmony, one of those delightfully optimistic joint species vessels that the Terran systems insisted on building despite literally everyone else in the galaxy saying, hey, maybe don't put the apex predators on a ship with everyone else. But humans, being humans, just smiled that weird way they do where you can see too many of their teeth and said, it'll be fine. It was not fine. Well, actually, it was fine, which was somehow worse. Elena Vasquez was the kind of human that made other species nervous just by existing. She stood at 6 feet 2 inches, or about 1.88 meters for those of you who sensibly use the metric system, with broad shoulders and the kind of casual physicality that suggested she could probably bench press a Glornak without breaking a sweat. She had these dark brown eyes that seemed to track movement with predatory precision, and she moved with the fluid grace of something that had evolved chasing down prey across open savannas. Which, fun fact, humans totally did. The Veltharans, on the other hand, were what the galaxy politely called a soft species. They had evolved on a peaceful garden world where the most dangerous predator was a herbivore that sometimes got territorial during mating season. They were small, fuzzy, with large eyes designed for gathering light on their dim homeworld. And they communicated as much through scent and ear position as they did through vocalization. Adorable, absolutely. Built to withstand literally any amount of stress, not even a little bit. Kersh was a juvenile Veltharan, barely into his adolescent molt, serving as a junior technician on the Harmony. His fur was the color of burnished copper. His ears were too big for his head in that way that suggested he'd grow into them eventually. And he had the kind of nervous energy that made you want to wrap him in a blanket and feed him soup, which, coincidentally, was exactly what Elena wanted to do the first time she met him. The problem started 3 weeks into their joint mission mapping the Theta sector. Kersh had been assigned to maintain the environmental systems on Deck 7, which just happened to be where most of the human crew had their quarters. And Kersh, bless his tiny, anxious heart, was absolutely terrified of humans. Can you blame him? The kid had grown up on stories about the deathworlders, tales of creatures that could survive in temperatures that would boil blood or freeze atmosphere. Things that ate poison for fun and called it spicy food. Beings that had looked at the most dangerous predators on their planet and said, I think I'll make that into a pet. The first time Kersh saw Elena in the corridor, he quite literally flattened himself against the wall, his ears pinned back so hard they were practically inside his skull, and watched her walk past with the kind of horrified fascination usually reserved for watching a supernova in slow motion. Elena, for her part, had smiled at him. This was a mistake. See, when humans smile, they're showing affection. When most predators show their teeth, they're showing aggression. Kersh's hindbrain did not make the distinction. All it registered was apex predator bearing fangs, prepare for death. The the poor kid's scent glands flooded the corridor with fear pheromones so strong that 3 other Veltharans on different decks had panic attacks. Elena, oblivious to the psychological damage she'd just inflicted, continued on to the mess hall, humming something that sounded vaguely like ancient Terran music. Something about never giving someone up, never letting them down. Humans were weird about their music. But here's where it gets interesting. That night, Kersh had a routine maintenance check in the environmental processing room adjacent to Elena's quarters. It should have been simple. Get in, check the air filters, recalibrate the humidity sensors, get out. Easy. Except that the processing room door made a noise when it opened. A loud noise. And Elena's door opened approximately 2.3 seconds later. Kersh did what any sensible prey species would do when confronted by an apex predator in its den. He ran. Specifically, he ran into the nearest open door, which happened to be Elena's quarters, and dove under the first piece of furniture large enough to hide his trembling body, which was her bed. Now, a smarter being might have realized that hiding in a predator's actual sleeping space was perhaps not the tactically sound choice. But Kersh's brain had fully entered panic mode, and panic mode doesn't do tactical analysis. Panic mode does hiding and whimpering and praying to every deity that might be listening. Elena stood in her doorway, looking left and right down the corridor, clearly trying to figure out what had made that scurrying sound. She was wearing what humans called casual clothes, which consisted of soft fabric pants and a shirt with words on it. The words said, "I'm not saying it was aliens," but it was aliens. Humans thought this was funny. Nobody else did. She looked around for another moment, shrugged in that very human way that suggested casual acceptance of the universe's weirdness, and went back inside. Right into the room where Kersh was currently having a religious experience under her bed. The door hissed shut. Kersh's ears went from pinned back to completely flat. His breathing came in short, shallow gasps. Every survival instinct he had was screaming at him that he was going to die. This was it. This was how he would end. Torn apart by a deathworlder in her own quarters, and nobody would ever know what happened to him because humans probably ate the evidence. Elena walked past the bed. Her footsteps were surprisingly light for something so large and deadly. She went to her desk, sat down, and started doing something on her datapad. Kersh waited for death. It didn't come. Minutes passed, then an hour. Elena worked at her desk, occasionally muttering things like, "No, that's not right," and "Come on, you piece of junk," at her equipment. Very unpredator-like behavior, honestly. Kersh's racing heart began to slow from imminent cardiac arrest to merely sustained panic attack. Then Elena stood up, stretched, and Kersh heard her joints make small popping sounds. He'd heard about this. Humans had skeletal structures that made noise. It was deeply unsettling. She walked toward the bed. Kersh's heart rate immediately returned to catastrophic. But Elena didn't get down on her hands and knees to drag him out and presumably feast on his organs. Instead, she sat on the edge of the bed, which dipped under her weight, and Kersh could suddenly see her feet. She was wearing soft coverings on them. Socks, his cultural database supplied unhelpfully. Humans wore fabric on their feet indoors. "Long day," Elena said to nobody in particular. Or maybe to him. Oh gods, did she know he was there? Was she taunting him? She reached down and Kersh nearly passed out. This was it. This was absolutely it. Game over. End of Kersh. She pulled out a box from beside the bed. Kersh watched, completely frozen, as she opened it and pulled out what appeared to be a cloth with a geometric pattern. She unfolded it and draped it over her shoulders like some kind of ceremonial garment. Much better, she said, and there was actual contentment in her voice. Then she got up, walked across the room, and did the most bizarre thing Kersh had ever witnessed. She bent down and plugged in a small light near the floor. A soft, warm glow filled the lower portion of the room. Not bright, just enough to push back the darkness. It was the kind of light that suggested safety, comfort, peace. "There we go," Elena said softly, "in case anyone needs it." And then she got into bed, above Kersh, and within minutes her breathing had evened out into the rhythm of sleep. Kersh lay under that bed for another 3 hours, completely baffled. The light stayed on. Why would a predator leave a light on? Predators preferred darkness, ambush cover, the element of surprise. This made no tactical sense whatsoever. Unless, no, it couldn't be. Kersh's mind raced through the possibilities, each more unlikely than the last. Could the human be afraid of the dark? No, that was ridiculous. Humans thrived in the dark. They had evolved as pursuit predators who hunted during the twilight hours. But then why? The answer came to him slowly, reluctantly, because it seemed so improbable that his brain rejected it multiple times before finally accepting it. The light wasn't for her. It was for anyone who might be afraid. No, absolutely not. That was insane. Predators didn't make accommodations for prey. That violated every natural law Kersh understood. And yet, the evidence was right there, glowing softly at floor level, pushing back the shadows. He stayed under that bed until his shift alarm went off on his personal comm, which he had desperately set to vibrate only. The gentle buzzing against his side nearly made him jump and hit his head on the bed frame. Elena stirred above him. Kersh frantically shut off the alarm. For a few agonizing seconds, he heard her breathing change, heard her roll over. The bed creaked softly. Then her breathing evened out again. She'd gone back to sleep. Slowly, carefully, moving with all the stealth his species had developed for avoiding notice rather than for hunting, Kersh crawled out from under the bed. The journey to the door took approximately 10 years off his life expectancy. Every movement felt too loud, too obvious, too certain to wake the sleeping predator. He made it to the door. His hand hovered over the control panel. He looked back just once. Elena was a dark shape in the bed, turned toward the wall, breathing peacefully. The small light continued to glow by the floor, faithful in its vigil. Kersh slipped out. The next day, he should have reported the incident, should have gone to his supervisor and explained that he'd accidentally entered a human's quarters, should have requested a transfer to a different deck, a different shift, anything to avoid contact with the human crew. He didn't. Instead, he found himself volunteering for the evening environmental check on Deck 7. And when his work brought him near Elena's quarters again, when she opened her door at the sound of the processing room panel, when she smiled that toothy human smile and said, "Hi there, everything okay with the systems?" He managed to squeak out, "Yes, Commander, all within normal parameters." She nodded. "Good. Let me know if you need anything, okay?" And then she went back inside. The light came on 20 minutes later. Kersh stared at the soft glow bleeding out from under her door and felt something crack in his understanding of the universe. It became a pattern. Every evening, Elena would turn on that light. Not the main quarters lighting, just that one small, warm light near the floor. And Kersh, despite every ounce of common sense telling him to stay away from the predator's den, found himself drawn to that corridor, found himself finishing his maintenance checks at times that just happened to coincide with Elena's presence. She started acknowledging him. a nod here, a smile there. Sometimes she'd say things like, "Getting cold in here," or "The air's running well today." And he'd realize she was trying to make conversation, actual conversation, with him, a prey species technician who was maybe a third her mass. It was disturbing and fascinating in equal measure. Then came the incident on day 37 of their mission. The Harmony encountered a spatial anomaly. Nothing dangerous, the sensors said. Just a minor gravitic fluctuation that would cause some temporary system stress. Everyone should stay in their quarters until it passed. Kersh made it to his assigned shelter with his podmates, 3 other Veltharans who worked in various technical departments. They huddled together in the approved manner, drawing comfort from physical contact and shared scent. This was how their people dealt with stress. Closeness, pack bonding. The ship shuddered, lights flickered. Kersh's podmates pressed closer, their fear scent filling the small space. And all Kersh could think about was that light. That ridiculous, illogical, warm little light that stayed on through the night. The anomaly passed. Systems stabilized. The all-clear sounded. Kersh's podmates relaxed, started chattering about how frightening it had been, how brave they'd all been. Normal post-stress bonding. Kersh excused himself and walked to deck 7. He stood outside Elena's quarters for a full minute, trying to convince himself this was a terrible idea. Trying to remember every lesson about predators and prey, about survival and common sense. Then he pressed the door chime. Elena answered immediately. Her hair was mussed on one side like she'd been lying down. She looked surprised to see him. "Kersh, everything okay? Is there a problem with the environmental systems?" He should have said yes. Should have made up some technical issue that required her attention. Instead, he said, "The light, the one you turn on at night. Why do you do that?" Elena blinked. For a moment, she looked confused. Then understanding crossed her face, and something softened in her expression. "Oh, that." She glanced back into her quarters. "Would you like to come in? I can explain." Every instinct screamed at him to run. He walked inside. Her quarters were exactly as he remembered from his panicked glimpse that first night. Neat, organized, with personal items that spoke of a life beyond the military. Pictures on the wall, a cloth with a geometric pattern draped over her chair. That same box beside her bed. And the light, currently off because it was day cycle, plugged in near the floor. Elena sat on her chair, gesturing to the bed. "You can sit if you want." Kersh remained standing, baby steps. She smiled, not showing teeth this time. He realized she'd learned not to do that around non-humans. "The light," she said. "It's a human thing. Or maybe just a me thing. When I was young, I was afraid of the dark." Kersh's ears perked up despite himself. "You? Afraid?" "Yeah. Sounds silly, right? Humans are supposed to be these tough deathworlders." She said it with a tone that suggested she found the designation amusing. "But I was a kid, and kids get scared. My mother used to leave a night light on for me. Said it would keep the monsters away." Monsters. Kersh knew that word. Creatures from human mythology that were apparently even more dangerous than humans themselves. Terrifying. Not real ones. The ones in my head. Elena tapped her temple. Fear is fear, whether it's rational or not. The light helped. Made me feel safe. When I grew up, I kept the habit. And when I joined the TSS and started serving on mixed species vessels, I thought, well, maybe I'm not the only one who feels safer with a little light in the dark. Kersh processed this. You leave it on for others. Yeah, I figured if I was nervous being on a ship with a bunch of species I'd only read about, they were probably nervous being on a ship with humans. We've got kind of a scary reputation. She said it with a self-deprecating laugh. So I keep the light on. If anyone needs a safe space, or just needs to not be alone in the dark for a while, they can see that light and know someone's there. Does that make sense? It made absolutely no sense according to everything Kersh knew about predators. It made perfect sense for Elena. I hid under your bed that first night, Kersh blurted out. I panicked when you came to your door, and I ran in here and I hid under your bed for hours. Elena's eyes widened. Then, to Kersh's absolute shock, she laughed. Not a predatory sound. A genuine, warm laugh that crinkled the corners of her eyes. Oh my God, you were there? I thought I heard something. I figured maybe it was the ventilation acting up. She paused, her expression turning concerned. Were you okay? You must have been terrified. I thought you were going to eat me, Kersh admitted. Elena's face did something complicated. Kersh, I would never. None of us would. I know the reputation, and yeah, humans can be dangerous. But we're also just people. We get scared. We try to make things better. We leave lights on for each other. She leaned forward, her body language open and non-threatening. I'm sorry you were so frightened. If I'd known you were there, I would have told you that you were safe. Something in Kersh's chest, something that had been tight and clenched since he'd first set foot on this ship full of deathworlders, began to loosen. The light helped, he said quietly. When I was under your bed, too scared to move, I saw the light turn on. And I thought, if you were hunting, you wouldn't leave a light on. So maybe I wasn't prey. Maybe I was just scared. Elena nodded slowly. Fear is fear, whether you're human or Veltheran or any other species. And sometimes we all need a light in the dark. They sat in silence for a moment, not uncomfortable, just processing. Can I tell you something? Elena asked. Kersh's ears twitched in assent. The first few nights on this ship, I was scared too. I kept thinking about how everyone saw us as these dangerous predators. And what if I accidentally hurt someone? What if I did something that frightened someone and didn't even realize it? I felt like I had to be constantly careful, constantly monitored. It was exhausting. You're afraid of us? Kersh couldn't wrap his mind around it. But we're prey species. You're people, just like me, and I didn't want to be the monster in anyone's story. She smiled sadly. Turns out I became the monster in yours anyway, at least for a little while. No, Kersh said, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. Monsters don't leave lights on. Elena's eyes got shiny in that way human eyes did when they were experiencing strong emotions. That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Kersh took a step closer, then another. He sat on the very edge of the bed, still ready to bolt, but trying. Elena noticed and deliberately leaned back, giving him space. Want to see something? She asked. She pulled out the box from beside her bed and opened it. Inside was the cloth with the geometric pattern. This is a quilt. My grandmother made it. Each square is from something important. This one is from my first school uniform. This is from my mother's wedding dress. This is from a blanket I had as a baby. She traced the patches with gentle fingers. Humans make these to remember, to feel connected to our past and our family. When I'm stressed or scared, I wrap it around myself and remember that I come from people who loved me. It helps. Kersh leaned forward, curiosity overcoming caution. We have something similar. Scent cloths. Each family member adds their scent to the fabric over time. It becomes a record of the pack. That's beautiful, Elena said. She offered the quilt. Want to touch it? It's soft. Kersh reached out tentatively. His small fingers touched the fabric. It was soft, softer than he expected. And he could understand, suddenly, how wrapping oneself in this could feel like a hug from everyone who'd contributed to it. We're not so different, Elena said quietly. Humans and Veltherans. We both need comfort. We both need to feel safe. We both need light in the dark. Over the following weeks, something shifted on the Harmony. Other crew members noticed that Kersh was no longer flattening himself against walls when humans passed. That he sometimes ate in the same mess hall section. That he'd been seen talking with Lieutenant Commander Vasquez in the corridors. Other Veltherans, emboldened by Kersh's survival, started taking shifts on Deck 7. They noticed the lights, small ones by the floor in several quarters now. Not just Elena's. Other humans had started doing it too. A Glornak engineer mentioned that the lights helped her too. She had excellent night vision, but the gentle glow was comforting. A Thraxian pilot admitted he'd been nervous around humans, but seeing the lights made him think maybe they weren't so different after all. The Galactic Council had classified humans as Category 4 deathworlders based on their physical capabilities, their planet's hostile environment, their evolutionary history as persistence predators. All technically accurate. What they'd missed was the other part. The part that made humans wrap themselves in quilts made from memories. The part that left lights on for those who might be afraid. The part that said, I see you're scared, and I want you to feel safe. 3 months into the mission, Kersh had a maintenance emergency at 0200 hours. A critical air filter had failed on Deck 7, and he needed to replace it immediately. He was working in the access corridor, tools scattered around him, when Elena's door opened. She was clearly freshly awakened, wearing those soft sleep clothes humans favored, her hair going in about 6 different directions. Need help? She asked, her voice rough with sleep. I've got it, Kersh said, not looking up from his work. Then, thank you, though. Want some company? I'm awake now anyway. Kersh paused, considered. Sure. Elena sat on the floor, cross-legged, watching him work. She didn't crowd him, didn't offer unnecessary advice. Just sat there, a comfortable presence in the quiet ship night. You're good at that, she said after a while. I like it. Making things work, keeping everyone safe and comfortable. He pulled out the old filter. Like you. Like me. You make people feel safe and comfortable, just in different ways. Elena was quiet for a moment. That's the job, I guess. We all take care of each other in our own ways. Kersh installed the new filter, running diagnostics. Everything showed green. He packed up his tools. Kersh, Elena said as he prepared to leave. Thanks for not staying scared of me. I know I'm still probably a little intimidating. You are, Kersh admitted. Then he surprised both of them by adding, but that's okay. Lots of things are intimidating until you understand them, like that air filter. Looked scary and complicated until I learned how it worked. Then it was just a filter. Elena laughed. Did you just compare me to an air filter? It was a compliment, Commander. I'll take it. Kersh headed down the corridor, then stopped, turned back. Elena, keep leaving the light on. I don't need it anymore, but I think others do. And it's nice, knowing someone's thinking about that. She smiled, teeth and all. Kersh didn't flinch. Will do, Kersh, will do. The mission completed successfully. The Harmony returned to the Joint Species Station, and crew members rotated off for leave. Kersh found himself standing in the docking bay, his small bag of belongings at his feet, watching humans say goodbye to non-human crewmates. Elena was there, saying something to a Glornak who was laughing at whatever story she was telling. Kersh walked over. "Commander Vasquez." She turned, her face lighting up. "Kersh, heading out?" "2-week leave, seeing my pod on the homeworld." "That's great. Say hi to everyone for me, even though they don't know me. Just say hi to them from the scary human." "You're not that scary." "Character growth, I love it." She held out her hand, palm up, in the human gesture of greeting. "Friends." Kersh looked at that hand, large enough to easily encompass his, attached to a creature that could probably tear him in half without trying, part of a species that the galaxy feared. He reached out and placed his small hand in hers. "Friends." Her grip was gentle, warm, careful. "Hey, Kersh," Elena said as he picked up his bag to leave. "If you ever need anything, anytime, you know where to find me, and the light will be on." Kersh's ears perked up in the Veltharan expression of gratitude and affection. "I know. Thank you, Elena." As he walked away, he heard her call out one more thing. "See you when you get back, buddy. Stay safe out there." Buddy. A human term of endearment, meaning friend, meaning packmate, meaning family. Kersh's tail, which had been neutral, rose in happy confidence. The Galactic Council had classified humans as Category 4 deathworlders. Kersh had classified Elena Vasquez as something much more important. Friend. And really, when you thought about it, the galaxy's classifications were all wrong anyway. Because the truly dangerous humans weren't the ones who showed their physical power. They were the ones who showed their emotional power. The ones who could take a scared juvenile from a prey species and through nothing but patience and kindness and a small light by the floor, turn fear into friendship. Those were the humans that would change the galaxy. One night, light at a time. The end. But not really the end. Because when Kersh returned from leave, he brought something with him. A small battery-powered light that he installed in his own quarters. Not because he needed it anymore, but because maybe someone else would. Maybe another scared crew member would see that light and think, someone understands, someone cares. And when the other Veltharans saw it, they got their own lights. And when the Glornak saw those, they got lights too. And eventually, all through the ship, in quarters belonging to every species, small lights began appearing by the floors. Not bright, not flashy, just there, constant, saying in their soft glow what words sometimes couldn't. You're not alone. You're safe. We're here. Elena walked through the corridors one evening and saw them all. Dozens of small lights, like stars brought down from the void, pushing back the darkness together. She stopped by one, bent down, and smiled. "Monsters don't leave lights on," she murmured, remembering Kersh's words. But friends did. And maybe, just maybe, that's what the galaxy needed to learn about humans. Not that they were dangerous, not that they were deadly, but that they were friends waiting to happen. Packmates looking for their pack. People who would see someone afraid and think not prey, but someone who needs a light. The Galactic Council would eventually revise their classification of humans. Not from Category 4, that was accurate, but they added a note to the file. Category 4 deathworlders. Exercise appropriate caution. Known to adopt vulnerable species. Will leave lights on. Approach with openness. And somewhere on a quiet ship floating through the black, a human and a Veltharan worked side by side, comfortable in each other's presence, while a small light glowed nearby. just in case anyone needed it. Because that's what friends do.